Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome. I'm Samantha Stone, your host, and with me today is Chris Penn, who is a fellow, I don't know if Bostonian's quite the right word, because I don't think either of us actually live in Boston proper, but we certainly call ourselves Bostonian. Chris is the co-founder of Trust Insights, which is a data science practice for marketers. He is my go-to person when I have questions about how to use data and how to visualize data. And I've been really enjoying the work he's been doing lately. And he was kind enough to agree to come chat with us. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. And I think the qualification for being a Bostonian is that you're not actively angry when the Patriots win yet another Super Bowl. So I think as long as that's the case, you're a Bostonian.
I love that criteria. I think that's really a great one. I'm going to start using that, Chris. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me. One of the things that got my attention recently is an article that you had posted and shared in your newsletter about some of the common mistakes people make, right? We work really hard to do analysis and we get all this tremendous information, but then part of the hard work is translating into something that people can act on. And I'd love to start by getting your take on how visualization can help us do that.
So it's interesting you mentioned that because there's really what we call a hierarchy of analytics. The term was originally coined in 2011 by Gartner, and we've upgraded it since then to a series of 5 questions, right? So at the very bottom layer of the hierarchy of analytics is descriptive analytics. What happened, right? And this is where a lot of visualization tools do really come in handy, from built-in ones to whatever in your favorite marketing analytics applications, to things like Google Data Studio, the free dashboarding software, to Tableau, and then and all of the various competitors in that space. And all of them really good at helping you answer the question of what happened. Did we get more website traffic yesterday than the day before? Yes or no? What's the bounce rate on our emails? How many people tweeted with a poop emoji yesterday?
Amazingly, that is a legitimate question that marketers need to ask ourselves.
It really is. In that, there's a whole rat hole you can go down on how to treat emoji with in terms of sentiment analysis, which is another discussion for a later time. But that's descriptive. What happened? The second layer of the analytics hierarchy is diagnostic analytics. Why did something happen? And this is where visualization software is really not going to help you. What you need here is qualitative research, customer advisory boards, one-on-one interviews, focus groups, surveys, all that stuff to help understand why, because no amount of analytics will tell you why somebody made the choice they did. It's just the nature of humans. So that's layer 2. Layer 3 is predictive analytics, which is what will happen. If you know why something happened, then you can logically say, okay, if we know that this metric or KPI or whatever is the most important, then can we forecast it forward using statistical technology and some data science tools to what will likely happen? And that is where you start venturing into the next realm, which is prescriptive analytics, which is what should we do about it? Okay, we know this data, we know why it happened, we know it's likely to happen. What should we do? And again, visualization doesn't play a huge role there in terms of the analysis. It does play a huge role in terms of mapping out your strategy and your roadmap. Like, okay, we know that in the first week of July, email volume is going to be super low. So let's not send our big promotional email this week, but let's send something fun as a real simple example. And then the fifth layer, which really very few companies have managed to do, is proactive analytics. And this is where we ask the question, can a machine take over the supply chain of analytics for this task for us? And that's where you use things like true AI and deep learning to let the machines figure it out on their own. And really, unless you work at Facebook, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, or IBM, you're not working at a company that can do that realistically well for any given function. But when you talk about visualization, most of the time we really are in the descriptive stage of analytics, and that's okay, because 95% of companies really are stuck there in terms of they can't find the data, they have no idea what the data says, and they can't draw any analysis of it.
I am so glad that you talked about that distinction and that hierarchy, because all too often people mistake the what happened for the why something happened, and they make a lot of assumptions about understanding that. And I've always said, data tells us what, it doesn't tell us why. And I think that understanding how these things relate to each other and when visualization, it's important. It plays a really important role for us, but don't mistake it for that why.
Exactly. And the reason why that's happening so much more in the last few years is that, A, the tools have become more accessible, right? Google Analytics and Google Data Studio and Tableau and Domo and all these different companies producing analytics tools. And, in defense of marketers, a lot of these vendors make that promise, like, you don't know why things happen. Well, no, but you're trying to sell it.
Nice, right?
It would be nice. But the vendors know they're selling to the C-suite that has absolutely no understanding of analytics in a lot of cases, and they just want a bullet point for their monthly PowerPoint to the board. And very, very few marketers have a good background in statistics. It's just something that, I know a lot of marketers who expressly went to school to learn marketing, so they didn't have to do math.
I'm a recovering economist. That's actually what my degree is. And I appreciate that very much. It's, I think, true. A lot of people are more creative by nature, and that's why they were drawn to marketing initially. And then lo and behold, marketing shifted and it became a lot about data and understanding behavior and things that certainly when a lot of people my age went into marketing, wasn't available to us.
Exactly. Think about something as simple as the difference from a statistics perspective between a mean and a median. Because for those of you who are not math inclined, a mean is another word for average. They are both measures of centrality, what happened in the middle of a data set. Marketing data is especially subject to outliers. Like, one day you got a link on Reddit and suddenly you have 1 million visitors to your website, and then there's 5 visitors every other day. If you use an average, you're going to say like, oh, you have 30,000 visitors on average to our website today. But if you use a median, it's like, no, it's 5.
But the other one feels so much better.
It does. As the old Mark Twain quote goes, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, the 3 kinds of lying. But because people don't have that quantitative background, they can make a lot of mistakes in their assessment of what happened, and then critically make bad judgments and bad decisions about, okay, what should we do? Well, our average number of website visitors was 30,000 last month, so we need to add, make that go up by 10%. Well, no, if you actually got 5 most days, you're never going to hit that target. You're always going to fail, and that's why the CMO's office has such a short tenure, because a whole bunch of people who don't know math trying to answer for P&L.
I think you've raised a really critical function. And I've certainly sat in rooms with really smart marketers who are really, really talented, but have given the output of result of a survey or some other thing. And they've manipulated the data in ways that mathematically they just can't do. And unfortunately, I'm not the greatest teacher of statistics, so I understand it. I'm not great at explaining necessarily, oh, you just can't add those numbers together and divide. Like that doesn't work that way. So, short of everybody taking a statistics class, what are some things that you think are common that, we should help people look out for at least and be wary of?
I mean, really, it does come down to like, here's how numbers actually work. To your point about adding things. I used to work at a company and we were evaluating the results of a survey at one point. And this person I was working with was like, oh, no, we can just add these two percentages together. I'm like, no, that's completely not how that number works, right? You cannot do that and get a valid result. He's like, why not? I'm like, let me, I actually had to draw out like little Legos on a page. I'm like, when you have 30 Legos, it still took some time. So there's to some degree a necessity for education. But the other thing that makes me optimistic about all this is that as machine learning and AI take over more and more of the general repeatable tasks that we do, as long as the systems themselves are being engineered well, the best practices and the adherence to actual math are being engineered into the systems so that the marketer then can't either manipulate the data to say what they want it to say, or if they just don't have the quantitative background, the machine will do a lot of it. And I was teaching some marketers last week in Quebec how to build a machine learning model with Watson Studio, IBM's Watson Studio. And one of the things that you can't get around in Watson Studio is it has a very defined set of processes, best practices, and things that are required that you must do. Like you can't say, oh, just skip that and do it. Like software is like, nope, you're going to do it my way.
You shall not proceed forward.
Exactly. And so in cases like that, I think that's very good because it doesn't let us skip steps. It doesn't let us take shortcuts. It takes longer to get into production. It takes longer to get the answer. But it's the right answer if you've followed the steps.
I think that's really critical. And I think we often mistake data for speed. We somehow think that if we have a pool of data, we're going to be able to get information really, really fast. And I think it was maybe last night or early today, I saw you had done a post about a process that was running overnight or for several hours, right? And I loved it because it was a really healthy reminder for us that just because we have the ability to answer a question doesn't mean we can answer that question instantaneously.
And I think one of the things that's so dangerous in marketing right now is it's the way we do analytics with SaaS-based applications, from Google Analytics to, your favorite social media tools to, in this particular example, we're talking about influencer marketing. When we use an app on our phone or on our desktop, we expect immediacy, right? Well, Tinder swipes right immediately. Why can't I, swipe right on my analytics immediately? And what that forces vendors to do is it forces vendors to use the computationally least expensive, fastest techniques to get an answer to the user, which in many cases are not the best answer. In some cases, it's very, very far from the best answer. One of the most prominent influencer analytics tools in the social media space uses a measure of influence, their particular algorithm, that is one of 49. And most of the time, it's the wrong one to use. Most of the time, it's a poor choice, but it's computationally cheap, so their app runs fast. When you do it, like, for example, influencer identification, you have to look at the different algorithms that are available. Do you want to use eccentricity, betweenness, harmonic centrality, eigenvector? You take your pick of all the ones that are out there. And sometimes you'll have to go like, okay, I'm going to hit go on this, and I'm going to come back in an hour when it's done. For a SaaS user, that's unacceptable, right? We would not accept that. But so what we're essentially saying is we are willing to trade significant accuracy for speed. And so for marketers, one of the questions we have to constantly be asking ourselves and asking of all of our vendors is, what are the trade-offs of this tool or software or vendor? What am I not getting?
That is so important. And I think a lot of us aren't even aware that we're making a trade-off. We make an assumption that the person who is developing this has picked the algorithm because it's going to give us the best insight. But in fact, they're trying to also balance this expectation we have about experience and impatience. And I need it now. And I'm about to hop into a meeting and give me a screenshot. And that is a really important question we need to ask our vendors moving forward, right? Like, okay, so this is one way of calculating. It may be a good thing, but when do I not use this? And when it's not appropriate to use this, what should I be doing instead? And how do I get access to that other piece of me? Because in reality, if we plan correctly, and I know things come up in unexpected ways, but we can generally control when a campaign is going to hit, when we set a target. really even waiting an hour, 2 hours, or even 48 hours usually is okay. We usually have the time to do it. There are some rare exceptions. Something has happened in the world that needs immediacy. And that includes, a board member walking down to the CMO's office in an uproar. I get that. But if we want to get beyond what answers, right, to your heart, you want to get beyond just this is a thing that happened, we have to help the organization have patience. I don't think anybody else is going to do that but us.
I completely agree with you. The organization has to have patience, and the organization has to be, and this is something that marketers themselves are guilty of substantially. Organizations and marketers are guilty of incuriosity. I just want the answer. Well, don't you want to know why? Nope. I just need the answer. I like to your point. I got a board meeting. I got to fill in 3 bullets on this PowerPoint slide. Just tell me the answer. Do you want the right answer? I don't care. I just need an answer. I need to, I put it on the slide. And so that lack of curiosity is driven by, 2 things. One is obviously the priority. You got to answer to your bosses. I get that. And 2 is a lack of education. It's a lack of knowledge of what else is possible. Like I write all the software that we use at Trust Insights for a lot of our marketing analytics. I am aware there are plenty of vendors that have off-the-shelf solutions, but every single vendor, like you and I have gone to a number of marketing technology shows, and every vendor, when you ask them, like, oh, no, it's a proprietary secret. Like, okay, I know more about the algorithms than you probably do, salesperson. It's not proprietary. It's just a bunch of things duct taped together. I know I write software. But because marketers don't have that technological foundation, they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know to ask, well, which algorithm? It's kind of like the issue we're having right now in marketing where everybody is slapping AI on their product. Like, this is an AI-powered product. Cool. Tell me what kind. I don't know. It's proprietary. Sure.
I really had that exact conversation about 2 weeks ago. I was walking by and, they were talking, and it was literally that conversation. Like, I don't know, what's really smart. My data scientists would know. And, I said, oh, great. So tell me about those data scientists. And, look, they're smart people. They're not data scientists. They're actually really good engineers who have done something valuable, but we're attributing a quality around machine learning or artificial intelligence that isn't there. And candidly, I think, for whatever buzz you think you might be getting in the short run, we're setting expectations for something we're not going to deliver. And in the end, I think it's going to be wildly disappointing to a lot of people.
Absolutely. People are expecting, and this is one of the things that I literally have as a programmed tweet in some of my keynotes. AI is not magic. It's math. It is only math at the end of the day. So if you're expecting mathematics to generate magic, you are completely going to be disappointed. Now, I will say there are some organizations and some vendors who will show you, 80 or 90% of the inner workings under the hood. And that's enough to know, like, okay, they're the real deal. I was talking with the folks over at Talkwalker, and I talked to some of their engineering folks, like, oh yeah, we use this algorithm for sentiment. We use this algorithm for this. Like, okay, you're the real deal. There's another one, Amperage, that, they're a big sponsor of some of these marketing technology shows. And I'm like, okay, show me how you make these decisions. And they're like, well, here's one of the diagrams of our system. I'm like, okay, cool. It's a random forest. And they're like, you know what that is? I'm like, yep, I recognize what a random forest looks like. But I can then say, okay, they know what they're talking about. By demonstrating and showing and visualizing, to your point, the technology underneath, you can go, okay, they're the real deal, or they're at least using the proper techniques in the correct context. You can always have a model that goes off the rails, but at the very least, they've got the correct car on the right side of the road.
It's so important. Look, I know a lot of people who are going to be listening to this are saying, but I don't know a random forest from anything else, right? If I ask that question, and I think 2 things that I tell people oftentimes is, one is just ask the question and have them explain it to you. Because if they can't explain it, then that's a flag, right? Mm-hmm. And, that's the biggest flag right there, is if no one can explain it. Maybe your salesperson hasn't been trained, fine. They'll get them to, set you up with someone who has a deeper background in how it works. Or maybe they've been told they're not allowed to talk about how it works. That often happens. And they should be able to explain it in a way that most business users can at least understand. You're going to get a gut check if this feels real or are they hand waving. And then secondly, if they are explaining things that you don't understand, go find your peer in operations, go find someone on your own software team, go, talk to Chris and loop you guys into the process, whatever it may be. It's important, as you've described, and even more important than I think most people realize, to make sure that they are using the right thing. Not that just they're smart and they're using algorithms, but they're using the correct ones for the context of what you're trying to achieve.
The other thing that happened in 2018 that has not become a big issue yet, but will be going forward, and big companies, IBM in particular, disclosure, I get like free shirts from them. Companies like IBM are doing is all of this AI stuff must have interpretability or explainability. It is a requirement in the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, that data which is used in a machine learning model, the company that built the model must disclose how the data is being used. So you have to have that explainability in your machine learning and in your AI tools and software. And you, the company, even if you're using a vendor, because you are the company that is executing the application of that to make marketing decisions, you must be able to explain what your vendors do. The vendor should provide you with compliance information about that. But at the end of the day, you are liable. The company, are liable for what you do with your marketing data. And there's no sign that this kind of legislation is going to diminish. In fact, it's going to increase. California's proposed privacy legislation has some things about what you do with marketing data and how it's treated. And I mean, you can't blame legislators for doing this. Literally every day you wake up, there's another Facebook breach. There's another one of 540 million records are left in an unprotected Amazon S3 bucket. And Amazon's like, look, we provide the buckets. We don't regulate what's in them. Some dope left this huge data file, completely unencrypted, unprotected in the open. So
I'm giggling because of how you described what it was, but it actually is a really big issue. It's a very serious issue, and marketers spend a lot of years, I think, trying to distance ourselves from IT and kind of say, look, all these SaaS applications, we have control of our world, we can move in our speed, we can do our own things. But I think we've moved to a phase where we do have to embrace our peers in IT. We do have to embrace our peers in security. And yes, it may slow us down a little, but it's going to make us better, and it's going to help us rebuild trust. Look, trust is broken. People don't trust companies, whether it's our fault or not, they don't. So let's stop, I think, being scared of the security in the IT world and start embracing it.
There's a framework. It's interesting because you're absolutely right. The marketing world, in a lot of ways, has become a shadow IT department. Only we don't have in marketing the 50 plus years of experience with governance, compliance, and controls that corporate IT does. Yes, they have to jump through a lot of hoops, but there's a reason for that, because if your data is breached, if you can demonstrate you've taken all reasonable efforts to protect yourself, you will not be held liable in a lawsuit. Or for the most part, that's true. There are really good frameworks. We use one. We recommend one to clients. There's an ISO standard, ISO 38500-2015, which is
just so you know, Chris is not reading. I can see him right now. He's off the top of his head.
It's a 6-part framework developed by the International Organization of Standards on corporate IT governance. We made a marketing technology version of it. We basically scratched off the word IT and put in marketing technology, but it's fundamentally exactly the same thing. But it requires you to think about, what is our business strategy? What is our marketing technology strategy to line up with that? What is our marketing technology balance sheet, which is all the accounting around things like your intellectual property, your data, the machine learning models you build, all that stuff should be on your balance sheet. There's marketing technology operations, there is governance, risk, compliance, and legal stuff. And then the last part of the framework talks about change management and human capital. How do you help people adapt to technology? And again, corporate IT has been doing this for 50 plus years, where and marketing is like, oh, everything's new, we don't know what to do. No, just ask your friends in IT. Bring them beer on Fridays and say, tell me what you have to comply with, so that we can bring those best practices that, by the way, we already have and we already pay auditors to do anyway, bring it into marketing and apply the same rigor, so that our butts are not on the line when some fool leaves a data bucket open on an S3 container.
100%. And, it's such an actually easy solution. And we totally overlook it. When I have had the fortune of working with a lot of tech companies in my career, and a lot of times we sold products that were for IT people. And the way we used to test our documentation is they would make Samantha do something. So they would make Samantha install a 10 terabyte server. And then, by the way, they would walk around the whole world saying, well, if Samantha can do it, anybody can. Right? That was like there's something behind it, Dietopia. It's a little insulting, but also very true, right? I am not an engineer by trade. I am not an IT person, but what skill I have learned is how to ask questions and who to bring into things and how to vet. And that is a skill that every single marketer, every single sales executive, every single CEO can, and I think must have now. I think we've reached the point where we just have to take the time.
Absolutely. Scott Brinker, it's the MarTech conference is happening as we speak. And Scott Brinker released his annual MarTech landscape. There are now 7,040 companies in the marketing technology space. And those are the ones that in the blog post he documented about this. He says, we know the landscape is missing a zero. There's probably close to 70,000 solutions because many of these have regional point solutions and things like that. And every year, this chart has gotten ridiculously bigger and bigger and bigger. He said the reason it's not bigger this year is we ran out of time. We have 9 people collecting data year round, and we still ran out of time. And when you have when you're looking at, okay, what should be in our marketing technology stack, and your choice is a 7,000 line item menu, it's like, it's like trying to go eat at the Cheesecake Factory. Like, I don't know. What should happen?
Hit a threshold. Like I keep thinking college tuition is also going to cap off at some point, and every year my bill for my kids goes higher and higher. But yeah, you're exactly right. Like, think about that. They have 9 people collecting data for 12 months. From the moment this is out, they're going to be working, and they ran out of time, and there's 7,000 and change, and they know many more. The only way to make sense of that is to start thinking about our strategy, what's important, aligning to it. And for people who are non-technical, to take responsibility, to ask the right questions. We don't have to code anything. We don't ever have to touch data, but we do have to understand how it impacts the business interaction we have. Because at the end of the day, everything that we're doing interacts with the customer in some way, right? It surfaces the chat bot. It, loads the web page. It routes the call, whatever those things might be.
Exactly. And if you're smart, there's this whole talk in our space and as well as business in general about this magical unicorn that poops fairy dust called digital transformation, right? A lot of it is very much
unicorn.
A lot of it very much is old wine, new bottle. But one of the things that at least Bill Schmarza, who was formerly at Dell and now is over at Hitachi Data Systems, one of the things he said that is truly legit about digital transformation is that you develop additional lines of business based on your technical capabilities. And for marketers, if you think about, like, for example, if you are working in marketing and you're building influencer lists, for example, and you create in cooperation with your IT department a tool, a piece of software that you code in-house because you couldn't find a vendor that did what you wanted. You coded something in-house that helps you build better influencer lists. Guess what? That is now an asset. That is now potentially a saleable product. I don't know how many folks remember this. This is ancient history. But once upon a time, there was a podcasting company called Odeo. And Odeo made podcasting software, but internally they had a messaging system for employees that they just opened up to the public. It was called Twitter. And what eventually happened is that this internal product became the company. And no one remembers Odeo for podcasting anymore, except we're really old. But we've all heard of Twitter. And so that type of digital transformation pivot is possible if you do the work of getting your shop in order based on these governance standards and being aware that just because you have to create software or IP for internal use does not mean just throw it away at the end of the day. Find a way to get extra value out of it. And then your marketing is not a cost center anymore. Now your marketing is a legit profit center with hard dollars.
That's a really interesting way of looking at this. And the reality is, unless we involve people outside marketing in discovering these season working these, you'll probably miss those things. We won't recognize that it's valuable to someone other than me, right? If I'm the influencer marketing person and I just want really accurate list of people who are not just, most visible, but actually most influential, and I have to go work really hard to build something that's going to do that, I may never see it for more than that. But my peer who is sitting and running in a different function may have some perspective that I never thought of.
Exactly. The algorithms that you use to determine influence in social media can literally be picked up and moved somewhere else. So you could take, for example, let's say you work in a highly regulated space like pharmaceuticals. guess what? People ain't tweeting about pharmaceuticals, right? At least not in the sense the people that you want to talk to. But guess who does talk about stuff like this? People who publish academic papers. Now, if you picked up the influencer algorithm and you applied it to who cites whom in academia, now you have an influencer network of people who are the most cited in papers. And guess what? If you want your product or service or ideas or things to be in academic publications for that validation, what was something silly like who's an Instagram person worth following becomes, how do we identify thought leaders in pharmacology papers? And it is the same model, it's just applied in different contexts. So yeah, how can we do this to find and create new value from our marketing?
I love it. Oh my gosh, Chris, I can't believe it. We're actually out of time. I've been asking all these questions and you've been so generous with it. I really hope this conversation has spurred people to think about this a lot, because I think we've been really afraid of our IT and data science teams. And when we do embrace them, we sort of get impatient with it. We often don't let them know what we're trying to solve, or like they magically read our mind and figure out what I would find valuable. It's our job to paint a path of business strategy and what we're trying to achieve, and then work with the teams, the smart people who can help us achieve that. So thank you for helping us explore that. It's been wonderful as always, Chris. I love your newsletter. So if anybody'd like to sign up for it, where can they go do that? I think it's a really great tool for spurring this kind of thinking.
Well, thank you. So I have two of them. My personal newsletter you can find at christopherspenn.com, and my work newsletter you can find at trustinsights.ai.
I love it. Thank you so much for being a fabulous guest. And for those who are listening, please take some time to go make some friends on the other side of the building or in a different building. You won't regret it.
Exactly. I used to be an IT person, so just bring beer. We're good.
He's just really nice. He's proof that it's not going to hurt as bad as we think it does.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.